We begin today the Gemara on Daf Pei Amud Beis, the very last line. So the Gemara here is continuing with various different takonis, halachas, that Yeshua instituted when the Yidden came into Eretz Yisrael. Before there was a Mishnah here on Daf Ein Tes that said about various different takonis regarding not raising small livestock in Eretz Yisrael, so they shouldn't eat and ruin the properties in Eretz Yisrael. So the Gemara continues on a similar theme regarding different takonis Yeshua made when Yidden came to Eretz Yisrael. Tana Rabbanan, we learned in the Braisa, Sarat Noyin Hisnu Yeshua, there were 10 conditions that Yeshua made and instituted for the Yidden when they came into Eretz Yisrael. Shiyumarim b'chosh. The first is that the animals that people have, they can go and in the forest or in the wilderness to graze there and to eat there. And even if it's someone that owns this forest, he shouldn't be makpid on this. He should allow it. You can go even to people's private properties to gather wood that you need for yourself. And also, again, the point is here in private properties for what you need to feed animals, and people should not be particular about this. They should allow you. And also to collect grass from people's property to feed animals. In any property, besides a property where tilson grows. I think tilson is fenugreek. Over there, because the grass is needed, it's beneficial for the growth of the tilson. So over there, you're not allowed to take this grass. And also, he was misakin that the kaipmin, the tiyas, b'chol makayim, that you're allowed to prune and cut from the shoots to the soft branches of a tree in any place to use it to be able to go and replant it. Chutz migrafiyas shel zayis. Besides an olive tree, grafiyas is like two fistfuls of the trunk of the tree. You have to keep there, or the stump of the tree that it should be able to continue growing. You don't want to ruin the tree completely. And also a new spring that comes out in someone's property. And Rashi here says definitely a spring that was there already from the times of Yeshua, even though it's in someone's private property, that people should be able to use it. The people of the city should be able to use the water from the spring. And also, that in the water, by the sea that there is by Tveria, which is really in part of Shevet Naphtali. So it's really their private property. But nevertheless, this was also a takana that you should be able to go and put your nets and catch fish with a hook by the Sea of Tveria. But you can't spread out this wall, this fence that you create for the fish to get caught there because because that might stop the ships from traveling through there. Another thing he instituted, that someone may relieve himself behind the wall, even in someone's private property. And the main thing the Gemara will explain is that you can use a rock from this wall to clean yourself. Even in a field which is full of charkaim, which is saffron, I think. Yeah, is that what it is?
Saffron, yeah.
Saffron, yeah, so which is something expensive and something where it's... So nevertheless, even there, they allowed... This was the takana that he instituted that you can go and relieve yourself there. Another takane, you're allowed to go in these pathways which were designated with permission to make a shortcut through someone's property. So you can't stop people from walking through, trespassing, going through someone's private property. He was misakan, you should be able to walk through these areas which were designated with permission to be able to go through, but not always. It depends if there's produce growing in the field. Until the time in the winter when the second rain comes, which is Yud Zayin Cheshvan, as Rashi brings from the Gemara in Tainus. So then things start to grow. So you can't just walk and trample over things that are growing there. But until then, people should be able to make a shortcut through a private property. Another thing he instituted, and you could also, when you're traveling, you're going on the road, and they didn't have any paved roads, and the streets become very bumpy, as here it says, it's like pegs that are on the road, which means that because of the winter and the rain and the mud, and what happens is then it dries up in the summer, and then it becomes very full of ditches, and it's hard to travel on the road. So if you need to, you can go on the side of the road, and even go in, at the border inside a person's private property to be able to travel. Another thing, person that gets lost inside a vineyard, mafsig va'oila and mafsig v'yedid. He's allowed to tear his way through. He's allowed to tear away the cut away the pieces where he's stuck there inside the vineyard to just make himself a pathway, a straight pathway to get out. He doesn't have to make a detour to go back and go all around to be able to get out, as the Gemara will explain. Umeis mitzvah kaina mekaimai. The final thing that he was misakin is a person that died somewhere, and whatever it is, he's a meis mitzvah, and there's no one to bury him. That spot where he's found, can be buried right over there in that spot. That becomes his spot for burial. You can't take it away from him. He's kind of that place. Okay, these are all the things Yeshua instituted. Now the Gemara will go through every single one of them in detail. So what did it say here? That he instituted in Eretz Yisrael that you should be allowed to go and take your animals into the wilderness, even if it belongs to someone private, and they can't stop you. Rav Papa says Rav Papa about this. This is limitations to this. This was only said if you have small livestock that is going out in what kind of forest? In a big, gasa means a big forest, a very thick forest, where if you're allowing your animals to go there, it's not going to destroy this person's forest. There's enough trees, it's big enough that it could handle your small livestock being there. Avol daka bedaka. But if it's your small livestock that you're bringing into a very small forest, very few trees here, or vegasa begasa, if you're bringing large livestock, even if it's coming into a bigger, thicker forest, then you're not allowed. Then you're going to destroy and take away from what this person's private things he has, his trees, as far as he can't allow this. And v'kol shekain, gasa bedaka, definitely if you have large livestock, to allow them to go in a thin forest, that's for sure not allowed. He allowed that you should be able to go and collect pieces of wood from someone's field, from someone's private property. So this also has limitations. This was only said if it's thorns that you're taking. We're not talking about good pieces of expensive wood that could be used for something, but just thorns that are there. That's something that you're allowed to take to feed animals or for other things. Some other wood that a person collected and put aside for himself, that you're not allowed to go and take. Even to be able to take thorns from someone's property, this is only if they're still attached to the ground, so you're allowed to take and cut for yourself what you need. If it's already detached, and he put it aside and he prepared it for himself, then that you're not allowed to take. And even to what's still attached to the ground, if it's still moist, so then this is something that you're allowed to cut for yourself and use. But if it's already dry, then once it's already dry, so that's something which is useful for the owner himself. You can use it, and when it's in a dry state, so then this wood is stronger and it's easier for him to use. That you're not allowed to take. And even when whatever you cut and take from someone's property, don't take and uproot the whole plant or the whole bush or whatever it is of these thorns, that it shouldn't grow anymore. Then we mentioned before that you're allowed to go and collect and take from grass from any place in someone's private property, because just taking grass you're not ruining his produce, his property. It's just grass to feed your animals you're allowed to take. Besides, if it's a property where it grows tilson, fenugreek, because the grass is beneficial for this fenugreek to grow.
What is that?
Fenugreek is a kind of legumes. Never saw it. I'm just telling you the translation that I saw. Okay, says the Gemara, lememre, shall we say, the tilson, mailola asavim. Is it true that for this tilson, the grass is beneficial for it, and therefore you may not allow your animals to take from this grass? But I'll ask you from a Mishnah in Masechta Kalayim, where it speaks about the Kalayim and the produce that you plant. So there it says, Tilson shall also imine asavim, that the fenugreek that grows and together with grass around it, other kinds of grass, even though there could be an issue of Kalayim here, and usually the Bezdin obligates the person, there shouldn't be an issue of Kalayim to uproot it, but in this case, they're not mechayivim to uproot it. And the reason is, the Bezdin doesn't get involved there is because they know that the person's going to uproot it anyways, on his own. Why? Because the grass that's there between his tilson is going to ruin the quality of the tilson. So he's going to uproot it by himself. So we see here clearly in the Mishnah that the grass that's growing between the tilson is actually bad for it. It ruins it. Rav Yirmiyah answered, Lekashya. Kan lezera, over there in that Mishnah it's talking about when you're using this tilson for its seeds, and kan lezirin. And over here in this Braisa we're talking about when you're using the tilson for the stalks, the way it grows, to eat from it. So the Gemara explains that lizera, when it's the tilson and grows for its seeds, koshula asavim. That's what it said there in the Mishnah in Klayim, that the grass that grows with it is actually not good for it. The makchishila, it ruins it, it takes away its full energy. Lizirin mailila. But the fenugreek that you use for its stalks, the way it grows up higher, so that the grass is actually good for it, it's better for it. Why? When the fenugreek grows between grass and it grows high, the stalks higher up, merkeve, so it sort of rides on top of it. It has a place like where to grow and to be able to lean on the grass that grows around it. So therefore there, you're not allowed to take away this grass. Or another version, another pshat of how to answer this contradiction regarding the grass amongst the tilson. Over here, it's what grows for human beings, and here it's what grows for the animals. The kivin de lebehema the zara, because he's planting it for the animals. So he needs the grass over there. He uses the fenugreek itself and the grass also for the animals, and therefore that's something which the grass is needed for it, and you can't take it away. And that's what the Braisa here was talking about. Says the Gemara, Dinan, how could you see? When you see fenugreek growing and there's grass amongst it, how do you know if this is designated for people to eat from it, and therefore the grass is actually not good for it, or the fenugreek is designated for animals and the grass is good for it? If it's planted in rows, laudam, you know that it's made for people to eat from it. But if it's not planted in straight rows, lebehema. So then it's planted in a more of a disorganized fashion. That's made for animals to eat from it, and over there you know that the grass has to be there for it. Okay, the next thing we learned before was, what was it, takana? The kaitmin atiyah b'chol mokaim. You can cut from a plant that's growing, from a tree, a young tree that's growing. But when you're cutting off from an olive tree, so there has to be 2 fistfuls in the height of the stump of the tree that you have to leave there, that it should be able to reproduce and continue growing. So what is this? What's the shear? Pirish Rab Tanchum v'Rabarius mishum zakem echad. They both said in the name of an elder regarding this shear, bezayis, that when it comes to the olive tree, kebeya, you have to leave at least from the trunk of the tree that's growing, or the stump of the tree, you have to leave a kebeya, this excise that should be sticking out of the ground, that it should be able to reproduce. Bekanim or begefanim, and when you're taking branches from reeds or from vineyards, minapekak ulamayla, there in the where it grows, there's these shapes of knots that you have inside the stump of what grows, or so over there you have to leave that area that it should be able to reproduce. The shar kalilan is from all other trees, min ubay shel ilan. You can only take from the softer branches of the tree, not from the sharper or the harder, older branches of the tree, because that's something that's part of the tree. It's going to ruin the tree if you take it. Min chadash she'ein ha'isapedis, you take only from fresh new branches that are not yet producing fruits. Min yashan shu'isapedis, not from older branches that are producing fruits. And also, mimakim she'ein erayas achama, you can take only, cut and prune for yourself only from area where the sun doesn't reach there, but not from the branches where the sun reaches there, where the sun shines in it directly. As the pasuk says, that over there where you have the sun that shines upon the produce or those branches, that's where the sweet fruits grow, and therefore that you can't cut. Then it said, if you have a spring that grows in a person's private property, all people of the city are allowed to come and drink and take from this spring. That not yet you can take from it, you can't stop anyone from coming and using it, but you have to pay. And however, we don't pass like this, that you have to pay for it. And then it said, you can place hooks to catch fish in the Yam of Tveria, which belong to Shevet Naphtali. But you can't spread out a bigger fence or net that stops fish from going and it gets caught in that area. This could also end up stopping ships from traveling here. You could spread out nets that catch the fish. If it's not like this wall that could stop boats and ships from traveling, so you're allowed. Tana Rabbanan Abraisa we learned, but Ishaina in the beginning, Hisnu Shvatim Zem Zeh. The Shvatim made a condition with one another, Shala Yifres Kliya, V'yamad Asfina, that you shouldn't spread out this Kliya, which creates this wall for fish to stop there, because it could stop the boats as well. Avol Tzadu Beresh Shleisu B'machmeres, but you could spread out nets to catch the fish. Someone had guided that line before in the Gemara, because you have here the Braisa that's saying it. Tana Rabbanan, we learned in the Braisa, Yama Shal Tverye, B'chelka Shal Naftali Yisa. With the Braisa that talks about the Takana of Yeshua, the Chiddush here was, because really it was all private property, it was in the portion of Yeshua, of Naftali that is in Eretz Yisrael. And now Naftali didn't only have in this area by Tverye, El Shenotam Loy Chevel Cherem B'Droima. He also had a portion that went further out into the south of where the Yam was. L'Kayim Mashanema Yom V'Darim Yerusha. That he yarshened, he got the Yam, the sea, and also from the Darim side, that he should be able to have access to the water, to be able to catch fish, and so on. Tanya Rab Shimon ben Elazar Tlushin Shebaharim. When Yidden came into Eretz Yisrael, and they saw different branches and whatever things there were in Eretz Yisrael, which were already detached, that were found in areas on the mountains. Anybody from any Shevet, even if it's not his territory, you can come and grab and take. But then, whatever is there in whatever territory, which was divided for each Shevet, and it's still trees or plants or whatever it is that's still attached, that is in the possession of that particular Shevet, which is his territory. And when the Eibusha divided Eretz Yisrael for each one of the Shvatim, it was divided in such a way that this wasn't a single Shevet, She'emloi, that didn't receive in his portion Bahar, mountains, B'Shvela, and lower plains, B'Negev, and other flat plains. How do they touch Negev over there? B'Emek, and the valleys. All these various different, and each one of these areas has various different benefits of how things grow, and so in each portion of the Shvatim, so they had all these different kinds of areas. Shanem, as the pasuk says, "Penu usulechem boyahara amayri v'kol shcheinav." You come, you go into Yisrael to the mountain of Amayri and all its neighbors, and the pasuk specifies you have Barova, lowlands, Bahar, the mountains, B'Shvela, valleys, and then Banegev. Negev is another kind of plain of land. And also the water as well. And even though here it talks about Amayri, but the same thing is also B'Knanim or B'Prizim or B'Amayrim, or the Bach takes out B'Amayrim over here. That what Shalifneim, that Shanem, because the pasuk over here says Vel Kol Shchenov. It says not only by a mighty, but it says the same that you find all these various different kinds of lands and fields and high, low, and valleys and so on. You find it by all other neighboring territories in Eretz Yisrael as well. That by the neighbors, it's the same thing as well. So that's a big mile that you see. The Eibusha gave for all Yidden to have everything exactly what they need in all types of different lands. Then going back to the Braisa, the things that Yeshua was masakin. When Yidden came into Eretz Yisrael, v'nifnin la'chayre yageder, that you could relieve yourself behind the fence or behind the wall in someone's private property. Even a field that's full of charkam, the saffron grows there. What's the main chiddush? The main point here is that Yeshua was Masaka, and that you can even take a rock that you need for yourself to be able to wipe yourself, to relieve yourself, to be able to clean yourself. You're allowed to take from someone's wall. But Rav Chisda said, "V'afilu that's even on Shabbos you're allowed to wipe yourself." Mazutre Chasida, Mazutre was pious and he did l'fnim Meshuras Adin shakel, whatever he took to use for himself, but he took from the wall, but umahad he returned it, he put it back. V'amalei l'shamei, but then and afterwards he told his servant Zil Sharket, go and fix it up. Go put plaster that even he used it, he needed it for himself, but go put it back that it should be fixed properly.
Why should you make him?
Huh?
Why should you let someone else feel?
Why should? If he that's the whole takana. In those times when there wasn't proper places for a person to relieve himself, and a person is traveling and he has no choice, so Rabbi Yeshua was masakin that you should allow people to be able to do what they have to, and even to use someone's property for this. A person is allowed to go in these areas in a private property, which are these pathways, which was designated with permission. Shus here means permission that people could go through until the second rain comes, Yuzayin Cheshvan, when it begins growing. But Rav Papa said that V'hai di don. Our properties over here, referring to the properties over here in Bavel, even after just a dew comes, and then a person's going to walk on this private property, it's his walking there is going to ruin it. So therefore you can't walk in the private property. And also you're allowed to go off the main road, which has these ditches, and it's hard to walk in the center sometimes, and you have to go to the side. Pegs in the road. Yeah, I mentioned before, so you can go on the side of the road, even into someone's private property, to be able to make your way through. So the Gemara says, Shmuel v'Rav Yehuda v'Shakla v'Azli Borche, they went out together on the road. Have a mistalik Shmuel at Tzidei Adrachim. So when Shmuel was going, so he went on the side of the road to be able to make his way through, because the center of the road was ditches and he couldn't go. Amalei Rav Yehuda, so Rav Yehuda said, Tna and Sheisne Yeshua Afile beBavel. So these conditions that Yeshua made about this, that you can go on the side of the road, even in a person's private property, to make your way through, is this applicable even here in Bavel? Shmuel was in Bavel, not in Eretz Yisrael. Amalei. So he answered him, yes, Shani Oimer. My opinion is Afile b'Chutzalot. It's not only in Bavel. In any place, in any other place where you are, this takana applies to be able to make your way through. You can go on the side. Rabbi v'Rav Chia v'Shakla v'Azal Borche. They were going on the road. They also went on the side to be able to go through. Bava Kama v'Azal Rabbi Yehuda ben Kanusa Kamayo. Rabbi Yehuda ben Kanusa was ahead of them, and he, or Nakusa, the other gear says not Kanusa but Nakusa. So Rabbi Yehuda, he didn't go on the side of the road, but he went only on the road. He didn't want to go into anyone's private property. And when he came to an area where there was a ditch or there was a problem, so he was jumping over. He had a very hard time traveling this way, but still he jumped in order to be able to make his way through in the center of the road without going in someone's private property. Rabbi comments to Rav Chia about this. Who is this individual that's traveling this way? He's showing his greatness. He's not doing the way we know that you're allowed. You're allowed to go on the side of the road and be able to make your way through. That's the way Yeshua instituted it. Where this person thinks he's holier than thou, and he has to travel in the center of the road and jump around like this. So Rav Chia said, Shema Rabbi Yehuda ben Kanusa or Nakusa Talmidihu. Maybe it's my student Rabbi Yehuda, and the whole ma'asav l'shem shamayim, and everything that he does is for the sake of heaven. He's not doing it to show off in any way, but he's a very holy, pious individual. Kimatu legabe, they came to him. Chazia, they saw, this is who it is. Malay. So he said to him, Ilav Yehuda ben Kanusa at. If not for the fact that I know you, who you are, and you're doing it l'shem shamayim, gezartinu l'shakech. I would cut off your split your legs, okay, which would be gizzard the parzala with a metal, with the iron club. Which in Rashi says it's an expression of excommunication. That the fact that he's acting in this way, different than everybody, showing that he's holier than other people, so then they would. This is not the kind of behavior that they should be doing. But because it was l'shem shamayim, so therefore he said he lets him go. Hatoya ben akram mafsek v'yored mafsek v'ayla. Person gets lost inside the middle of a vineyard, he can cut his way through to get out. Even though he's cutting someone's private vineyard, he can cut his way through to go out. We learn, if you're not there stuck inside the vineyard, you see that your friend is lost over there inside the vineyard. So you can cut your way through over there in this vineyard until you'll help your friend come back to the city or to the road. And then the Brisa says, who should taya ben akramim? A person himself that's lost inside this vineyard. Mafsik vayla mafsik v'yered, you can cut your way through in the vineyard until you come up to the city or l'derech or to the right way. So my v'chein, what's the chiddush over here? Whether it's your friend or you yourself are lost inside the vineyard, what difference does it make? Why is the Brisa saying this as a separate chiddush? Answer is, I would think, if you see a friend that's stuck in the wilderness or inside this vineyard and you're outside and you see the pathway, how you can get him out. So therefore over here, we allow you to cut through to help him out. Because you'll be able to cut the minimal exactly of what's necessary to get him straight out. So you see the yad elechem misalik, the nifsik, so therefore you can cut through to get him out. Avulhu, a person himself that's stuck inside this wind vineyard, the yad elechem kasalik, he doesn't see his pathway exactly where he's going when he's trying to cut his way through to come out. So loy nifsik, maybe he should not be allowed to cut his way through. And ahader bei mitzri, he should have to go all the way around a detour and go out, back out, and go around the entire vineyard and figure out how to get his way back to the road or to the city. Kamash Malan, therefore it's saying that he's allowed to make his way out. Now the Gemara asks on this, it's saying if a person's basically lost, that you have to allow him to cut his way through to come out. You know, he's cutting your vineyard, you have to allow him. And this, Yeshua instituted this. Fragt the Gemara, he says, Yeshua instituted this? We understand, we know this is what it says in the Torah. The Torah says, or the Bryce actually explains, that Hashavas Gufay Minayim. How do you know when you see a Yid that's lost? See a Yid that's lost in the forest, lost somewhere, that you have an obligation to help the Yid find his way back on the road, help the Yid find where he's going. Talmud Loimar, so we learn this from the pasuk where it says, V'hashivaisai. Over there, it's talking about the lost object that you find. But we learn now V'hashivaisai that you also have to return him, a person himself that's lost. So if so, why are we saying Yeshua instituted this? So the Gemara answers, the Eiraisa who the Kabei Mitzri. This is only someone that, he's lost. So what you have to do is, you have to help him to find back his way. But how? How do you help him find back his way? He has to go all the way around, make a detour, and come back to the road. You have to help him back. But it doesn't mean that you can help him cut his way through and make a shortcut, even though you're ruining someone's vineyard. Also, then Yeshua came, Takin, and he instituted the mafsik va'oile or mafsik v'yared, that you can allow the person to cut his way through to get straight back onto the road without a detour. The final thing that we had before, the takana of Yeshua was, a person that you see, you find a dead body in a spot, wherever it is, he acquires that spot and he's buried there. But I'll ask you from what it says in Abraise, you find a dead body that's in the middle of a road, so what do? So you take him to the side, to the right side of the road, and you can bury him there. That is, to the right of the road, or to the left side of the road. What's if you find a person and there's a stay bor, near? There's an empty property that's not planted, not used at all, and then there's a property that was plowed. So where are you going to bury him? So that body you find in the street, take him to the empty field. Why don't take him to a field that you see is already plowed and could be used to plant there? Take him to the empty place to plant there, to bury him there. Stay near stays there. If you have an option to take this maize that you find in the middle of the road to a field that's just plowed, but there's nothing planted there, or a field that's already planted. The Faneil is stay near. Take him to the field that was plowed, but there's nothing planted there. Not to ruin the field that's already planted. If both properties on the side of the road where you have an option to bury him, they're both empty, or they're both just plowed fields, or Steins Ruiz, both are already planted, so then you take him to either one of these properties. There's no advantage of one over the other. What's the point? We see here clearly that he's not kaina mekaima. You don't bury him in the spot where you find him. You have to take him to the side. And here we said, Rabbi Yeshua ben Nun, that is instituted when he came into Eretz Yisrael, that you bury the mace right in the spot where he's found. So the Gemara answers, Amarav Bevai, b'mutal ala meitza. When the mace was found in the middle of the road, and he's lying there in the middle of the road, spread out in the whole width, and he's blocking the entire road that you can't go through. So you have to be able to move him out in such a case. So since in such a case he's blocking the whole road, over here is where you're allowed to move him away. So since you're already moving him, so you take him to the place which is the most beneficial, not to ruin already a property that's being used that's better. Okay, now after the Gemara explained all the different the things that Yeshua was misakin, here the Gemara actually asks, Amri, now they said about this whole entire list that it said here, Asara, it said that there were 10 things Yeshua instituted, Bahani Chatzari Havin. It's actually 11 things if you count them. So why are we saying it's only 10? And it says the Gemara, Mahalchim, Bishvili Hareshus, this that it says that you're allowed to go in these pathways, in people's private properties, which there's permission to make a shortcut, Shlomo Amra. This is something that Shlomo Melech already says this. It's not Yeshua, this is not Yeshua. This is the Shlomo Melech says. As we learned in Abraise, if you have your property and the fruits in your property are all already done and everything is already taken care of, and now it's empty property, and nevertheless, a person doesn't allow anybody to trespass and to go through his property and not to make a shortcut for their convenience. What do people say about him? What that this person doesn't allow anyone to pass through? What benefit do people have, and how are people bothering him just by going through here if there's no produce that anybody's ruining when they walk through here? And all of Akasafayim is regarding this individual that the pasuk says, "Miyais taiv al tikrira." If you can be good, why call yourself bad? Why be bad and not allow people to come through? Now the Gemara says this is not actually a pasuk. Is there such a pasuk where it says this expression? There isn't. So the Gemara says, yes, ksiv ki gavna. There's a similar pasuk where it says in Mishlei, and this is what the Gemara meant before, when it says, Shlomo Melech is the one that says about this, Al timna toiv mi bailov. Don't hold back good from the one that owns it. B'yais leil yadecha lases. For what you have power in your hands to do. If you have power, if you have the ability to allow people to pass through your property, allow them to pass through. Okay, so therefore this is from Shlomo Melech. Now the Gemara asks, the Brisa said these things Yeshua instituted. In fact, the Gemara, V'suleke, are there no other additional things that Yeshua instituted as well when he came into Eretz Yisrael? Vayeked Rabbi Yehuda. There's also additionally what we learned in the Brisa that Rabbi Yehuda said. The Tanya Rabbi Yehuda said, B'shas it saw zvolim. When a person takes out the dung from the animals, you can take it out into the Rishus Harabim, and you could allow it there, and people step on it, and people walk over it, and then that creates fertilizer out of it. And you can allow it to be piled up there for 30 days, that the animals and the traffic that goes through in the Rishus Harabim steps on it, and it creates fertilizer. This is one of the conditions Yeshua made with Eden when they came into Eretz Yisrael. So this is another thing Yeshua instituted.
Take it out in the open?
Yeah, to put it out in the street, to help make it useful for fertilizer. Another thing, as we learned in the Brisa, the Tanya, Rabbi Shmuel ben Rabbi Yechon ben Breika. Tonight, bezdenu, it's a condition of a bezdin. You can go even into your friend's private property. The kaitzit, that is shaychai shel chaveiroi. And you can cut off a branch of his tree, and here we're not talking about, like I mentioned before, one of these young shoots of branches, one of these weak branches, but we're talking about a real strong branch of a tree. You can cut it off when? If what happened, the person has a beehive that he uses to produce honey, and his bees flew away, and they landed and they came on someone's private branch. And if you're going to try to get your bees back, and then they're going to fly away. You're going to lose these bees. They're very expensive. So instead, you're allowed to cut off the whole branch and like this, deliver it back to your private property. Even though it's the Meishaycha Shachaveiroi, that is. The Meishaycha Shachaveiroi, you have to pay him for the branch that you cut. But this was a Tanai that you're allowed to cut off this branch to save your beehive that got lost and that came and landed here. Another thing, if two people are traveling in the street and one person has a barrel of honey, another person has a barrel of wine, and the barrel of honey cracked and the honey is much more expensive than the wine, so then you spill out your wine in order to save his honey, but you then take though from his honey, a certain percent of his honey, to pay for the loss of your wine. Or tonight, Bezdin, another thing, a similar thing is, if two people are traveling and the two donkeys that are traveling, and one has loaded on it wood and the other one has loaded on it flax. So, and what happens if the one that's loaded with the flax is not able to go, it died, it's not able to continue going, so then the one that's going with the wood on it has to remove the wood and instead loads up the flax that he should be able to continue delivering the flax, which has much more value. And then you get paid for the percent of what you lost, of the wood that you let go in order to deliver his flax. But this is all part of the takanis Shalmanas Ken Hilchi Yeshua, the Yisrael Sa'aretz, that people should help one another when you see something that's more valuable, that's being lost, that you should drop what you have in order to help to save what your friend has. So we see here these additional conditions that Yeshua made when Yidden entered into Eretz Yisrael. Says the Gemara, here, these additional things that we're bringing here, this was either Rabbi Yehuda or Rabbi Shmuel ben Rabbi Yechon ben Breika. These were single Tanaim that said this, but before we're bringing a Braisa that is what everybody agrees to, not only the opinion of these individual Tanaim. But the Gemara continues to ask, let's just see the conclusion of this concept here. Rabbi Avin, he came and he said in the name of Rabbi Yechonin, that Echad, he said there was an additional thing that Yeshua instituted. Echad ilan anaytel otech stechaveiroi. When you have a tree, and this tree is leaning over into your friend's property, and vechad ilan asamach lameitzer, a tree that's leaning over into outside of the borders of your property into the Rishus Harabim, and the fruits are growing on this, and so the tree is actually it grows in your property, but the fruits it leans over and grows in the other person's property. So to some extent, the trees, the fruits that are growing are using the space, and it's out of your property. But nevertheless, maybe you can take those fruits and you can bring them v'kaira and as bikurim. You can bring them as bikurim, and you could even say the psukim. This is considered to be yours. It's even though it's growing over into other person's property, it's your fruits that you can bring as bikurim. This was another condition that Yeshua made when instituted when Yidden came in Yarshin Eretz Yisrael, that the fruits that hang over, it's still yours. So over here the question is, Rabbi Yechanan is an Amayre. And here we have a Braisa that's saying the things that were instituted. Rabbi Yechanan is not going to argue with a Braisa. So how's Rabbi Yechanan adding something additional that the Braisa does not say? Says the Gemara, Elo, rather we can answer differently. That really the Tana of this Braisa, who is it? Man Tana Asara Tunayin. This Braisa that says the 10 conditions that Yeshua made, Shehisnu Yeshua made when Yidden came into Eretz Yisrael, Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi who? It's Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. And Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi was from the later Tanaim, and he's actually considered to be an Amayra sometimes, and therefore Rabbi Yechanan could argue with him. And therefore, Rabbi Yechanan added this Braisa is only Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, and therefore going back to the questions that I'm going to ask before as well, we can't ask from other Tanaim that argued, because this Braisa is Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, other Tanaim argued, Rabbi Yechanan himself also argued, and he said that there was an additional thing that Yeshua instituted when Yidden came into Eretz Yisrael. Rav Gevia mi Kosel masin lo behedye. Rav Gevia that came from the city Kosel, so he learned it clearly that this was Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. Rav Tanchem v'Rav Bariyas Amri mishum zaken echa. They taught this brayse in the name of a zaken. Manu, and who was the zaken? Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, as we just explained, Asara Tanai Hisla Yeshua, that there were these 10 conditions that Yeshua made when Yidden came into Eretz Yisrael.